Hello, everybody. Hello and welcome to the third and final day of Global Soccer Conclave. I'm sure it's been an enriching and an insightful journey for all our attendees, for all our participants from across the globe, hearing leading experts and renowned panelists from different parts of the world sharing their thoughts, their insights, their learnings. Um, I can personally say that I've had a very good time over the course of the last 2 days, and of course, very excited to kickstart the third day with the super panelist and session that we have on our hands. So today's topic for the first session is data-driven decision making. We all keep hearing about the importance or the growing importance of data in today's sporting business, whether on the field or off the field, from a monetization point of view, from a player performance point of view, from a fan engagement point of view. So certainly a topic which is hot trending across the globe. And I've got the three of the very best people to share their thoughts in the same regard with me. I'll take a minute to introduce all of them. First up, we have with us Miss Fiona Green. Fiona is a sports industry stalwart with about 20-25 years of experience. She's also the director and co-founders of Winners. Winners is a CRM agency that provides a host of services to sports industry stakeholders, allowing them to manage their client portfolios to create different opportunities in fan engagement. Additionally, Fiona has also authored a book called Winning with Data, which is published by Routledge, which speaks about different analytical tools which are involved in CRM for sports rights owners, for buyers, and other agencies as well. Next up, we have with us Salvador Carmona. Salvador is the founder and managing partner of DribLab. DribLab is a big data management consultancy. They help and allow football clubs, organization, talent management agencies to make better decisions while recruiting, scouting, and analyzing different players to onboard in their portfolio. So in all, basically doing a cost and value analysis to see which player will help the team, which player will have a better market value in the years to come. And they do this through a bunch of tools using artificial intelligence, through big data, and so on. And last but not the least, we have with us Mr. Federico Weiner. Federico, again, brings years of experience and understanding of how IT culture is embedded with sports and how the both will coexist in the years to come. Federico is the CEO of a renowned player performance measurement agency called Inmotio. Along with that, he's also a doctoral researcher at Loughborough University in the UK. Federico has great interest in esports and gaming market. So I think that will be something which will be really interesting to hear from him and his thoughts on that. Our basic event flow is going to be talking about different realms of how data is used, like I said, about from on-field player performance point of view, and also from off-the-field revenue monetization and fan engagement. So what I'll do is I'll hand over the floor to our panelists to give them a couple of minutes to introduce themselves, to tell us about a little bit about their background, so all our attendees are familiar. So Fiona, you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you, Rohan. It's very nice to be here and to addressing your colleagues my colleagues on the panel and also the attendees at the conference. When you introduced me, you said 20 to 25 years experience. I was just counting back. It's actually 35 years. It's 35 years I've worked in the professional sports industry, but I only moved into this field of data about 10 years ago. And I remember when I first started working with data, a little light bulb went on. And I remember thinking, gosh, if I knew then what I know now, I'd have probably made a lot more money when I was younger. Because I was doing things like selling sponsorship and selling merchandise and trying to write ticketing strategies without the benefit of data, because of course we didn't have the technology. I didn't even have a computer. So yeah, we set up Winners to help rights owners and rights holders to learn how to use or to support them in their use of data. We then wrote the book, Winning with Data, just because it can be considered such a complex subject. And I remember when I first started working with data, I would Google what's CRM And all I would see is adverts for Salesforce or Oracle or SAP. And so I wrote the book to try and help other people coming into the industry to get a complete holistic understanding of how we use data, how we secure it, how we look at it, how we think about it. And then, of course, the book led on to an e-learning course. So we're here to help individuals learn more about the industry. Thank you very much.
Super. Thank you for that intro, Fiona. And 35 years, absolutely phenomenal. And clearly, like you said, had data been there in the 80s, 90s, of course, there would have been a different sports landscape that we have today. I'd now like to introduce Federico. Federico, if you want to take a couple of minutes and just tell our audience about yourself.
Thank you so much, Rohan, and happy to hear from our colleagues in the panel. I always say that we are not in the data anymore, in the data industry anymore for sports. I think we are in the era of wisdom from data. I think the evolution that we have seen in the past recent years means that it's not about storing the data. It's not about, let's say, making new tables and queries to the database. It's to, I want a click and the software should tell me suggestions about what to do. And such suggestions are becoming more and more smarter based on artificial intelligence, mostly, and new models that everyone is creating to understand better what's going on inside the pitch and outside the pitch. So from emotional perspective, we collect data from wearables, but also from optical tracking and other sources. Then we integrate all of them in our software, which can also be linked to third parties. So we are, let's say, vendor agnostic in that end, because customers in the sports arena use a wide range of services and brands. And sometimes it happens that, you know, clubs didn't have a long-term strategy on technology. So they might have acquired some brand because a coach took it. Then that coach left, but the brand is still in there and the new coach needs to adapt themselves. So they take another brand and then you have two different vendors for the same technology, right? This is a quite wide common problem in the football industry and other sports. So basically, we try to integrate all of them in one single source of truth where your models can deliver this wisdom. So I'm quite amazed about this process in sports because all the segments of society are going through this journey, and sports historically lagged a little bit behind others. So if you think about it, we got the stock market digitalized to take better decisions on the stock investments many years ago, and sports was not at the same level till recent times, and we are still fighting for it. So from a sports perspective, there's magnificent years to come in this digital change. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think, Federico, all of us will agree with you on this as to the importance different types of wearable technologies and optical devices have brought in the professionalism of the game. And when I say that, I don't just mean professional and the top level, but also funneling down to the grassroots level, and not just in Europe, but of course in Asian countries as well. Salvador, over to you.
Hi, how are you? First of all, thank you guys for having me. It's good to be in this panel with my colleagues. So about me, I've been working in data, I would say, for the last 15 years, first as a student, then a professional for like the last 10 or so. I worked for the NBA in basketball in the London office. And after I left the NBA, I went and got my master's and founded DripLab. And DripLab, what we do is basically we are data interpreters, mainly focused on player acquisitions, player analysis for football teams. We work with about 35 clubs worldwide. And we help them make better decisions in terms of data. If a team asks for something like, I don't know, a fullback that has certain parameters, offensive, defensively, and also like biometrical, like has to be this height, this age, contract end date, etc. We filter it for them so they can straight up go get the player that they are, in theory, seeking for. So it saves them a lot of time and money, and also opens their funnel while minimizing the risk. So that's kind of what we do in DripLab.
That's really interesting, Salvador, and I think it's also a very right time to have you with us. You know, with the major transfers that we've seen this year in football, of probably two of the biggest players that have ever existed and played. And despite their age not being on their side, the type of market value and interest that they've been able to generate. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Fiona, for introducing yourselves. I would now, start the proceedings. I think I can go with Salvador. So Salvador, my first question to you is, in big data, what have been some of the recent statistical advancements that you've seen which help a football club or a scout identify young and upcoming talent? And then how do they then go on and suggest them to a football club or a football talent management agency?
Yeah, so it depends on like the type of player that you're seeking for, depending on the position on the pitch. But basically, like 7 or 8 years ago, we started seeing more advanced statistics such as expected goals or expected assists, which now it's been evolved to like the build-up type of game on the threat creation within the pitch, to call it in an easier way. Those been the mix with eventing data. Also, with followed like Federico said, with the optical tracking and tracking data, has been key product to or model to create in order to track players that press, players that see between the lines and can create open space. So those have been the latest models that have been developed, at least here in Dribbblab. But it has to do a lot with the fact that 10 years ago, we only had eventing data, so only basically things that happen with the ball. And we couldn't see what was, 10 meters away from any given player. So thanks to this advanced on raw data, we've been able to create new models to find these players. Regarding to young players, it's simpler than people think. In reality, it's very important to have like minutes played at a younger age. So ratio age to minutes. It's a very good alert on like who is playing. There's usually a legit reason why the player is playing, not other way around. And therefore, with that, you can create the certain models depending on which position you're seeking for and what the needs of your club are. If you need somebody that crosses, or if you need somebody that shoots a lot or whatever, so in order to fill in the gap that your team is missing.
So do these parameters differ for a younger under 13, under 15 player compared to somebody who's already making it to the pro level?
Well, the reality is that when you make it to the pro level, you have more data, so it's physical data, etc., that help you have more data and therefore make better decisions or more informed decisions. But no, the parameters are the same once the pitch is 11 versus 11. Obviously, when they're like little kids, it's a little different. Also another thing to say is that a very important part of this is actually not that data-driven part. It's more so like psychological behavior of the evolution of the kid. At 13, we value certain things as human beings, and when you're 17, you value other things. So it's really hard to forecast because there are other things that get in the way, and those are hard to predict. But going back to your question, yeah, it's more so like when they make it to the pro level, you have more data, and therefore you can make more intelligent or informed decisions.
Rohan, if I can add on that, and Salvador touched on a point that I think is quite interesting. This idea of when the kid has 13 or the girl has 13 is quite different when she has 17 and so on. This is something very important to consider because technology is not invading human decision, it's helping human decision. And this is a discussion in the sports industry, I think, that still had not been strongly developed enough, because some coaches historically have been, oh, wait, don't put me any stuff inside the pitch because I know this industry for seasons and we have been successful winning tournaments without this stuff interacting inside my ecosystem. Why I do need it now? But younger and younger generations of coaches have been growing up with data-driven decision making in many other aspects of life. So now they understand much better that services like tracking, like modeling the data are really, really important to add context to the decisions and also to communicate better. I have an example. Years ago, I'm talking maybe more than a decade ago, there was a lot of criticism around Karim Benzema when he joined Real Madrid because press said he was not running enough. And this was a perception of people probably in the stadium, probably from the press, probably for even media campaigns. And I remember first time a player came out to a press conference with a report of, you know, how much he ran, because it was early days of optical tracking, and he demonstrated that, look, I'm running even more than other forwards. So where is that I am lazy and not running, right? So then obviously you can quantify on quantity, but how you run is very important. That's why, coming back to Salvador, they say, okay, how many minutes you play it. So it means, okay, let's cross this data and generate that wisdom that delivers the insights that we need to take better decisions inside and outside the pitch.
Absolutely, Ferdy. And since you mentioned and touched upon that point, my question to you here would be, who is the key person who manages and analyzes these data sets? And and how vital is that person's relationship with the player in terms of having the confidence of the player who is understanding and analyzing that data?
Yeah, clubs have a very wide range of structures to deal with this data, depending obviously of the size of the club, the amount of technology they have, and also the, let's say, the philosophy behind this technology, how this should be applied, if it is only for young academies or for the first team, and so on. There's I would say no standard rule yet in the industry. It's quite fragmented. However, at the same time, more and more, every coaching team is incorporating a video analyst and a data scientist. This means that the complexity of what they can play depends of resources, but let's say the basic would be to film the games and to have an Excel spreadsheet to cross the data with the GPS and so on. So these structures are being more and more developed. And I mean, actually, I think if you ask in the industry, 20 years ago, there was no one data scientist in every first division club. And now we will find out that you have in every first division club and maybe in some second division clubs, right? So it's expanding that way. And I truly believe, strongly believe that every sports organization in and out of football should have a technology strategy which involves a data-driven department where this information can be processed, stored, and analyzed now and in the future, because the accumulative of data also delivers wisdom. So it's not that you take data from today's session and you don't use it anymore. This data is going to be useful 10 years ahead from now when you need to see the track record of such players.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now, shifting a focus slightly from on-the-field data to, coming to a little more fan-focused data points. To Fiona, we've been hearing of late a lot about, the blockchain technology and machine learning and how it's impacting fan engagement and creating different opportunities. You want to touch upon that and introduce to our audience how exactly blockchain or machine learning plays a key role in fan engagement?
Yeah, okay. So thank you, Rohan. I'll answer your question shortly. But before I do that, I just want to provide a bridge between the subject that Salvador and Federico were talking about and then what my particular field is. Because, yeah, I don't work in performance data for athletes or footballers or cricket players. I work on the business side, using the data points to sell more tickets, sell more sponsorship, get more engagement, get more kids playing. But there were some real similarities because the principle is exactly the same whether you're on performance or business. And of course, you've got two different sides of the business in one conference here. I loved what you said, Salvador, about psychological impact, because in our field, we talk about the same thing. We call that qualitative data. So we've got 4 types of data we look at. And the psychological impact is qualitative data, motivations, emotions, feelings. How can we apply that to all our models? And what I can say is, Salvador, we are nowhere near doing that in business. We are nowhere near doing that. It's so difficult. And of course, when you talk about the use of data and technology, everything is automated. And one of the things we struggle with massively here in Britain is we use this concept of sarcasm. So when somebody kicks a ball, we could either say great hit to mean it was fantastic or great hit to mean it was lousy. So that's a struggle we have when it comes to understanding emotions. And Federico, when you talked about the state of the industry, like 20 years ago, there was no club with a data scientist. We're actually further behind. The business side is actually further behind than the performance side. You know, performance data has been used for years and years and years, going back to 1984 and the whole Moneyball concept with the Oakland A's. But on the business side, we probably still don't have championship level clubs, League Two clubs with a data scientist working in the business side. We probably only have a data scientist in the Premier League, you know, tier one clubs. But anyway, I just wanted to provide that link. So back to your specific question, which is about blockchain technologies and how it's used in fan engagement. So blockchain is obviously the underlying technology. And what we're looking for from clever developers and creative people is to come up with the application, the front-end application, which benefits from this more robust security, which is blockchain. And there are so many examples of that out there already. I mean, you must have seen Socios, the cryptocurrency. So lots of other cryptocurrencies finding a way into the sports industry. Non-fungible tokens, NFTs. Goodness me, fantastic optimization for rights owners, athletes in particular, to sell something really unique. But even something more basic, we have season tickets being delivered on blockchain technology. And even the last, I think it was not Euro 2020, because of course there were no fans, but I think it was the Champions League in 2018 or 2019 was using blockchain technology to deliver tickets. So there already are the models there for using blockchain-based technology to support fan engagement.
Absolutely, Fiona. With the sudden boom and rise of, you know, the crypto concept and the NFTs in the market, and also maybe the digital memorabilia, do you feel that the sports industry as a whole, is it a viable option for it, considering all the cybersecurity threats that might arise in the near future?
That's an interesting question, Rohan. So obviously the cyber security threats, I mean, there's lots of different threats. For Salvador and Federico, the threat of a competitive club being able to hack and find performance data of a competing team is far greater than the types of hacks that might suffer on the fan engagement side. Worst case scenario is somebody might lose, you know, their email address might be hacked, or worst case scenario, their credit card details might be hacked. And we can't take it lightly, but the threat for the engagement side, I think, is less extreme than the threat for performance side, particularly when you're talking about young players, underage players, and getting access to children's data. But you know what? Blockchain was supposed to be secure, hack-proof. It was supposed to be the most secure form of technology. But as recently as 2019, or as long ago as 2019, we are finding examples of blockchains being hacked. Unfortunately, I just think it's a reality that wherever there is the use of technology and people who are looking to push and be creative and advance our industry, we've got hackers who want to take advantage of loopholes. And some hackers do it just to expose the threat. And of course, some hackers do it for personal gain, which of course is the wrong type. But I don't think focusing on security threats to blockchain is any different to focusing on security threats to traditional security methods. And unfortunately, we see it all the time. There was a national governing body of football in the UEFA environment who had their systems hacked last year. All their finance system went down, their performance system went down, everything went sent down. There was, in the last Olympics, there was a massive hack of athlete performance data. It's just going to continue, but I don't think it should prevent us from being creative and coming up with new applications and trying to continue to build that fan engagement. We just have to be aware of it and try to implement strategies to fight against it.
True. I think only over course of time, you know, when we have a few case studies in front of us, there'll be more, dissection of those and trying to understand the different threats which can be on a monetary level and on a non-monetary level as well. Coming back to Salvador, so this will be probably a very key question for a lot of developing football and overall different sports markets, especially in Asia. What sort of resistance has there been from the traditional scouting mechanisms and the age-old methodology, and when you bring in the big data into it from a grassroots level? does it complement the old age technology of scouting, or is it more like a competition to them in order to kind of improve their efficiency?
What I found is more like people think it's black or white. So they think that if you come in and you do this, then they will not have, basically that the job will be getting taken away. And in reality, it's I personally believe in a mixed model. The reality, you do need to go watch the players. I'll give you a real example. We work with Celta de Vigo here in Spain, amongst other clubs. Celta de Vigo, we flagged a player. It was 2 years ago in French second division. And we flagged it for them. They watched it on video. They liked the player. So the math was good. The eye test was good. Then they went to watch the kid live. And he was very good. Like everything pointed out. Eventually there was he made it a foul that the player didn't believe it was a foul. So he started yelling at the ref. The refs gave him a yellow card. Everything got heated. The player got substituted because the coach thought that if he kept playing, then he would get sent off. When he was getting substituted, he started yelling at the coach, "Why are you changing me?" Blah, blah, blah. So these are things that data cannot tell you right now. So the fact that his emotional intelligence might not be a par with what the club was seeking, because he was like, I don't know, like a young maverick, I guess. And those are the limitations that they have. And that's why I always say to them, it's like, hey, listen, thanks to the fact that we have data and advanced models, we can find players that you would not otherwise find. But you also need to watch the players live and need to watch them on video, because not the full story is told by numbers. These are human beings at the end of the day. So what I told them is, like, listen, we're not going to take your job. It's not going to be A or B. It's going to be A plus B. That's kind of the biggest limitation. What I hate the most is the excuses that they give you, like we don't have any budget or whatever. In reality, is that you just don't want to do it. But that's a different part of the story. But I think the biggest issue is that I think they will take your job away. In reality, it's at the end of the day, it will become a mix of things.
Anything on that, Federico? Do you also believe it's a hybrid model where you have the old age scouting system and then now the data and the tracking devices that you do have at the disposal?
There was an interesting story a few years ago in the US. There was a American football team who based all the decision making of the coach basically in an algorithm. And they made the experiment. And they also tried this with a women football later on. And the outcome was mixed. So in let's say the American football team, they succeeded. And in the football one, soccer for the Americans was not. And the reason that I believe that happened is because the data points that they collected from NFL were quite more advanced than the ones from soccer. Because the models have been there for a longer time, and US American sports has a long tradition in statistics and say data-driven decisions based on such statistics. That's why, yeah, with the story of Billy Beane and what Fiona mentioned before, which is a magnificent movie to see about how baseball was transformed based on data science. That's a process that occurred in certain sports at a certain level years ago, but they say that out of the US and particularly in the European football leagues and the South American football leagues, is still far from what this can be achieved. But that's the exciting challenge, is that we are on that journey now, and there are many companies like ours that can deliver such a value. So when a coach or a club says, I don't have the money for it, it means that they don't understand what they get in exchange. It doesn't mean that they don't have the money. Because if I tell you now, Rohan, will you give me $1 million? I need to do something. And you will say, come on, that's too much. I might not have it, right? Unless you're a multi-billionaire, but it's a lot of money even if you are. And I tell you, well, you know, with that $1 million, I don't know, Cristiano Ronaldo will come to this Congress and you will earn 50 more million because I show you a business model. So then obviously it's an investment. It's not anymore an expense that you feel is too expensive. So I try to explain the same to the clubs, the very same way. If you don't move your models through this is because you are not understanding the value of it. So probably we are not explaining enough. That's a possibility. Or we need more education and training together. And where I see the business going is in a freemium model, the very same way that many other industries have adopted before. So do you want to pay for extra knowledge or for extra storage or for extra whatever? That's what you normally do in, let's say, services like Google, right? I mean, you get a convenience service, but if you want more storage on your Google Drive, then you pay extra. So I think that from performance analytics point of view and from fan engagement, which is a far away, let's say, wide range of services that you can apply in there, it's not only about models, about how players are inside the pitch, it's about how consumer behavior can be, and that bridges you to retail industry, high-tech industry, because it's at the end of the day, the consumer is not only the sport fan consumer, that person also has a life, and then you can make the links, right? So I think in this regard, we are going to, let's say, software as a service model with freemium licenses, and where everything can be, let's say, stored in a database somehow, and the wisdom that you can get out of it, it depends which value you perceive for that. So you will organize your budget depending on your needs, but that needs are not trended by the market, are trended by your perception of the value.
Absolutely, because you know, something which I was also contemplating on, and I would have asked you in the journey, is that how easy or difficult is it to replicate some of your performance tracking measures from one sport to another? You know, because we do see a bunch of companies around the world, each having a different subset of the audience of a particular sport that they're catering to. And then if they want to replicate those performance tracking points to a different sport. So like,
yeah,
to give an example.
I think you touched a very interesting point. I mean, in Mojo, we do the best tracking on in a pitch because we are the most accurate. We have the LPM technology, right? So that measures 1000 hertz compared to GPS, which is 5 times less. So that difference means that we can measure much more. And that data, yes, can be used to analyze the game, but it can also be exported for media purposes, for betting purposes. So everything starts with a good data collection. If you have good data, then you can model it the way you want. DribbleLab can make their magnificent models to track player behavior. Fiona can extract that data to get more fan engagement, right? And then all this ecosystem nurtures each other thanks to such monetization opportunities.
Absolutely. I think there has to be that funnel from one aspect to the other. Now coming to Fiona, and this is one of you know, something which has been playing in my head for the last few weeks. You know, ever since we've seen a company like Socios going around the world doing different partnerships for fan engagement, for fan tokens and NFTs. Is there going to be a copyrights issue in the NFT space? And who is the actual owner of the NFT? Because a match is broadcasted or is produced by, let's say, you know, FA or UEFA. It's broadcasted on a certain channel. A certain player or a team is playing in that. Who is the rightful owner, or is it going to be a revenue share, or how will it work?
Okay, so firstly, Rohan, I wasn't prepared for this question because it's not about data, but I have worked in intellectual property all my life for 35 years, so I will be able to give you my take on it. So who owns the intellectual property will be down to individual events, different scenarios. So for example, if the NFT is related to a goal scored in a Premier League match, and then it's going to depend on the way the rights are distributed amongst the Premier League. So Premier League English football, the TV rights are owned by the Premier League, full stop, and they share the revenue with the clubs, yeah? So for an NFT about a goal scored in a Premier League match, even if, you know, there's a Liverpool player in it, the NFT will not belong to the player and will not belong to Liverpool. It will belong to the Premier League, unless a separate contract has been agreed between the Premier League and the club, and also the club and the player. But if the NFT is a player, a Liverpool player on the golf course, and he's just hanging in his free time, then of course the intellectual property rights belong to him. So every scenario is going to be different depending on what the event is. Is it the Summer Olympics, where the NFTs will be owned by the IOC, or is it the Olympic qualifying event where the NFT rights will be owned by the local Olympic Association? It really is going to depend. If you could give me a specific NFT you're interested in, and I'll give you my interpretation of who might own those rights.
I think you pretty much got what I was coming to, because eventually the host organization in some case might be UEFA, in some case might be IOC, in case of cricket might in a World Cup match might be ICC. So of course they will definitely own, should actually own the NFT, but because in some cases a player like a Messi or a Ronaldo might have a great leverage on the commercial value of the NFT. So, I mean, of course, this.
Yeah, no, but you're 100% right, Rohan. And this discussion we're having now is exactly the same as the discussion we were having 30 years, 20 years ago. And we weren't talking about NFTs, we were talking about T-shirts, for example. And actually, it was really David Beckham who was the first player that sort of stood up and said, hold on, my image is more valuable than the club. And therefore, if somebody wants to do a T-shirt with Man United and David Beckham, I should get some of that money as well. So he was kind of the first one whose personal image was so strong that he had the ability to stand up and, or his agent had the ability to stand up and debate with Man United. There's also something else that's related to image rights in the world of football specifically, and I'm sure it's the same in other sports, is that when 3 players are included in the image, then individual players don't become involved, it stays with the club. But when there are less than 3 players, for example, David Beckham on his own, etc., that's when the conversation starts around the individual. But it's all down to who has the power. And you gave the examples of Ronaldo and Messi. Well, of course, you know in those examples who holds the power, yeah? So that comes down to a very smart negotiation between the player's agent and the football club itself.
That's absolutely true.
That helps.
Absolutely. See, that's why I said, because it becomes so subjective depending on the value that a player brings to the club. With the recent transfer of what Ronaldo moving to Man United has done to their, jersey sales, I think is broken the all-time record. Social media engagement, so creating that sort of a model for the club to again connect with the fan base. I think it is very subjective. Like you said, player to player, sport to sport, a LeBron James in the US, a Stephen Curry in the US, to a Ronaldo or a Messi in Europe, to maybe like a Virat Kohli or a MS Dhoni in cricket in India. So of course, across different geographies, there will be these personalities who will be able to command a certain share for themselves. But in some cases, they might not. So I think that's still a very gray area with respect to IP.
I wouldn't say it's grey. I would say it comes down to negotiation. So it's not grey. It is in that there's no hard and fast rule. But it's not grey because it's down to an individual negotiation. So when a player is negotiating to move to a new club in whatever sport, or if an athlete is negotiating to participate in an event in any sport, it's down to the way they negotiate their contract. So in the field of athletics, for example, when an individual is invited to turn up for an event, their agent might say, okay, for this athlete to come and participate in the 100-meter race, they need to have an appearance fee of X, and you need to give them a percentage of merchandise, and you need to allow them the rights to use the logo and their own marketing. So it's not so much that it's grey, it's just one of those things that is to be negotiated by an agent representing an athlete or a player. And then it's down to who controls the most power. And as we've mentioned with Ronaldo and Messi, well, and certainly Beckham back in the days, the conversation was very different to when it's a lot of the lower level, still elite players, but lower level players.
True. Now, since we're talking about, the commercial valuation that there is, Salvador, something which I'm really interested is, the type of work that DribbLab does in analyzing and recruiting players for different talent management agencies, which of course have a slightly more commercial angle with their relationship with the player compared to a football club, which might be at least 70% maybe looking at the performance side of the player. How do you relate the two? And then how do you reach to a point where you're able to derive a commercial market value of a player?
So with agents, it's a different story, but not too different. basically we flag the young players for them so they can straight up try to recruit the players. That's number one of the side of the business. Number two side of the business is they have a portfolio of players that they need to move, or because their contract ends, or because the coach doesn't like them, or whatever. And we analyze each and every player that they have in their portfolio, strengths and weaknesses, and we try to find clubs that have those weaknesses that could be gapped with this player. So it gives the agent a lot of strength because they can go to the club and say, "Hey, I know you're looking for a right back." And because you're right back, or you should be looking for a right back because your right back doesn't do this, but my guy does it. And that's kind of how we work with agents. I try to summarize it, but that's what we do for them.
And then from an agent's point of view, since you've been you've been in that chair, how is the commercial negotiation or that valuation then reached? In case of there might be talks that Ronaldo is now 36 years old. I mean, for 1 second, let's try to forget what he's achieved, but just surely because of his age and where his physical performance might be, is there a relation to what his market value of 25 million is now?
Well, the market value, it's a particular scenario because at the end of the day, I always give this an example with Mbappe. When he went from Monaco to PSG, he was valued at 10 million euros according to transfer market, but somebody was willing to pay 180. So in reality, it's about demand and supply. There's not that many of these stars that also produce a value off the pitch. So in reality, it's how much is somebody willing to pay for you. So besides your performance, if you have a marketing added value, as Fiona said earlier, then the price changes, and it's not all about your sports performance. But regarding to the agents side of our work at Dribbblab, it's purely based on the sport side. It's how this player fills in the gap of the club that we're trying to sell it to. How much is the player worth? That's something that the agent has to decide and then negotiate with the club. We stay out of that one. We just basically, as consultants, give them the tip of like, hey, you should talk to, I don't know, Werder Bremen or Sevilla or whatever, and try to place the player there because they should need it in theory.
Right. So Federico, at Inmosio, the type of player performance tracking that you guys are doing through optical and wearable technology, is it a purely physical performance, or does it have a tactical element as well for a football manager to then extract data from?
Good question. So indeed, we have, let's say, XYZ positions on the pitch, and we also have, let's say, loads of any exercise that you do during the training / the game. Then it comes to combine this in models that we have that automatically can deliver to you the combination of both. So then you can start making analysis such as, okay, if I have only GPS data, then I can see the number of sprints or number of loads. But if I have that data combined with the optical tracking data, then I can see how many sprints have been made with say, a rival in less than 2 meters. And then I can see the success rate, and then I can start thinking, oh, this player has a strong psychological sprint when it comes to be close to a rival rather than not. And this type of wisdom that was not in there yet, and was only a perception. And perceptions is also what the valuation of every player / asset you will have. And this comes to the very basic of economics. Is some people sustain is only offer and demand. Some offer sustain is also about the production costs. So if you are from the Austrian school of economics, then you think that let's say $1 million values nothing if you are in the middle of the ocean and you have nothing to buy, right? And other people think differently about this. So this philosophy behind the economics also is transferring into the sports market on data. So we perceive value differently depending which data point are we looking after, who are we looking after. I mean, even if we have better KPIs, let's say from a player in a lower league rather than a Brazilian player, young player, we normally tend to think, oh, it's the next Pelé, the next star, right? So that also influence. So there is a lot of variables to consider where the market is moving and the variables that we need to look after to make the hit on the market on that regard.
And from a pure data IP point of view, I know there have been instances which have come out in the media in the past around the whole ownership. Do you think that's a space where there is clarity from all stakeholders, or not yet?
No, there is not. And I agree with Fiona. She was mentioning about the NFT. This is also comes to negotiation power. However, also it comes to interest in that negotiation. Some clubs, you still think that NFT is a joke. So why they should matter about it? Oh, just give me the contract and let's stay with TV rights and you get the NFTs. I don't care. And maybe in 5 years time, they really care and they want to say, oh, I should have think about that 5 years ago. So it's really important to understand the trends in the market and try to settle an ecosystem that is healthy for you and for your partner. Because also, you don't, if you are, let's say, a strong stakeholder, you don't want to crush everyone in the market in favor of you, because at some point that reverts backwards. So when potentially when the client realize about it and then they want to, to move to another vendor because they feel this unfair. So I think that sharing the data between the partners is good. There should be some boundaries in there, but at the same time, licensing should not be 100% restrictive to everything, because otherwise there is even no way that a startup like Dribbblab can start the business with not enough money for funding such data, right? So I think that the ecosystem itself is regulated in that regard to have more open data initiatives and sharing, let's say, knowledge between different competitors / partners time to time.
Understood. Yes, I think from a conversation point of view, from what I gather, the role of an agent or a player agent, I think, is very critical here, especially in cases where the player might be joining a club which has a better negotiation power or a bigger team of lawyers, or in some cases where the player has a bigger pedigree than the football club.
Look, in the 80s, a player agent will take a VHS to the club, and here's my player, see the VHS. Then in the 90s, a DVD. Then in the 2000, a video recording in the laptop. And now they attach the video plus the data file that is generated somewhere.
True. So now, Fiona, coming to you for my last question to you for the session is CRM, and how CRM in the sports industry has sort of been a topic which is understudied or undervalued in a lot of sense, that it's never been the focal of conversations. How does CRM theoretical models work for, let's say, a B2B, where a football club might be having a conversation with a sponsor, and when a football club is kind of trying to have a better relationship with the fans? So do you think from a B2C or a B2B model, CRM operates in different manners?
Gosh, my goodness me, I didn't know you were going to bring CRM up. We could talk for the whole day about CRM, because, as you say, it's so misunderstood or not understood within the sports industry. But to answer your specific question, the principles of using CRM as a strategy for your B2B and your B2C engagement are exactly the same, because the principle of CRM is getting the right message to the right person at the right time, and of course on the right platform. So whether you're addressing a fan, you need to know who they are, how old they are, you need to know their current relationship with you, you need to know what you're trying to achieve with them, and you need to know how you're going to construct that message, what content you're going to use, and how you're going to get it to them, what platform. That's exactly the same whether you're also trying to get a sponsor to say yes to a deal, whether you're trying to get a media partner to promote a particular piece of content for you. Whatever business objectives a rights owner has, with when it comes to right message, right person, right time, that's the role of CRM, to make sure we achieve that. So whether it's talking to local government, local business partners, fans who come to the stadium every week, or fans who live the other side of the world, grandparents of fans who buy merchandise at Christmas, or kids who are starting to play the game, adults who have been playing the game for 20 years and are thinking about giving up. We use CRM to make sure we can get what we want, we can achieve what we want with these individuals or these organizations.
Right. So just a follow-up question to that, a quick one. Do you feel when it comes to, let's say, a renewal of a sponsorship cycle for a brand and a club, do you think CRM in some cases can be the most important factor where if in a partnership a certain KPIs have been met, but a sponsor is not willing to renew, how important do you think a CRM plays a role there?
The CRM gives you the tools to help you have that renewal discussion. So if, for example, a sponsor says, I'm not going to renew because I didn't receive the value, then of course we'll go back to our data sets and we'll look at the demonstration, the way we can demonstrate that the value we proposed was achieved. There could be lots of different reasons for an individual saying they're no longer going to sponsor. I think CRM allows us to challenge the budget issue. In fact, I was going to mention it, Federico, when you talked earlier about trying to sell your services, how challenging it can be, and therefore you're thinking of the freemium model, because my view is sports rights owners are naturally short-term thinkers. They tend to think about winning the league this season or winning this championship. They don't tend to generally think about the next 3, 5 or 10 years. And so the services you're selling are helping them, build a sustainable club that's going to go on and win and win and win for the next number of years. And it's the same with implementing CRM strategies. Yes, we can deliver quick wins to get things to be moving in the right direction and to show benefit along the way. But ultimately, it takes 3 to 5 years to embed CRM as a strategy and embed CRM as a way of doing business. Probably in the same way, it takes some time for clubs to fully embrace the use of data to enhance their performance. So it would depend on the specific reason that the sponsor is not renewing, Rohan, would depend on how CRM can support it. But CRM, when it comes to sponsorship, it's there to help you target better so you can sell more efficiently and more effectively. It's there to help you leverage better so your sponsors are getting more value out of their rights. And it's to help you get more money out of them, because when rights owners can use CRM to help them operate like media agencies when it comes to digital retargeting and digital advertising, then they can actually start talking to their potential sponsors about digital advertising and digital marketing, not just sponsorship, because sponsorship has such a small budget and digital advertising has such a large one. So there are lots of different ways we use CRM, not just for B2C, but also for B2B.
Absolutely, and I think having working in this sponsorship space in India myself, I do feel there is a big lag in certain cases where a sponsorship or a relationship between a rights holder and a brand, or rights holder and their fan has worked. I think CRM has played a great degree of role there, whereas in some cases where you feel the CRM or that relationship hasn't been the best throughout the year. That includes your peak season time, of course, and then also your off the season, how the club is trying to, maintain that relationship. We, of course, see the influence of OTT and, maybe each football club or sporting club trying to have their own content on an OTT platform or on their own digital services. So certainly, I think in that space, from a developing country point of view, a country which is growing in the sports space, CRM is something which does need to be inculcated.
Yeah, I think it was about 10 years ago that Gartner, the leaders in the technology consulting space, said that India would be one of the fastest developing markets, the biggest growth space for the adoption of CRM technology, because you had been underdeveloped for some time, but you're a big population. So as you start to gather momentum in this space, then of course you'll go very quickly, very far. So yes, we look forward to seeing that happen within the sports industry as well.
Yeah, I will change the name. I will change the name from CRM to FRM because it's fan relationship management.
Yeah, Federico, funnily enough, I'm just writing a blog about that at the moment. The problem with FRM, the problem with fan relationship management is we're not just talking about fans. When it comes to participation of sport, we want more kids playing football, soccer, more football, cricket, rugby, tennis, athletics. You can be a participant of a sport but not be a fan. So somebody like a national governing body like the English Football Association, they might have more interest in getting more people to play than selling more tickets, for example. And what about when you think about transacting customers? I flippantly mentioned a grandma earlier, but how many people buy merchandise as gifts for other people? They're not a fan. They're buying it for somebody who is a fan. And even talking about sponsors, you might occasionally have a sponsor who is a fan as well, but they're buying it for business purposes. So I actually challenge the world to come up with a new name for fan, because in the sports industry, we've got so many stakeholders. In the retail industry, you have a customer, yeah? And okay, you might consider a supplier is also a stakeholder you've got to take care of. But fundamentally, anybody who comes to your website, if you're a retail operator, is a customer. But in the sports industry, people don't like using the term customer because of the fans who, you know, believe that their passion is more valuable than their wallet, and of course it is. So I understand the principle of FRM, fan relationship management, but it doesn't cover every use case. I just think we don't have the right word. We don't have the right word that comes at the beginning.
It depends where you put the fence, what the market is. Because, I mean, otherwise you can say, okay, the market is 7 billion people, which is the global population, right? But when you start segmenting, then it comes that, yes, you can have a CRM, but what I call a FRM is not because choose to change the name. It's because there are pre-made models that make sense for that sport or for that club, and then they implement a technology that already has such models embedded, and they don't need to start from scratch. I have seen that in many clubs, that they prefer to have a turnkey Y-level solution that they can plug in, and they start, let's say, trying to understand their customers, which are their fans and others, better. And that product, let's say, focused on the sports industry, normally are now named FRM. However, from a holistic point of view, of course, it is a CRM, and I am more than in line with you that if the club wants to grow, the current fan base should be expanded. There is no other way.
But also, we don't use CRM to mean a technology, and we don't mean CRM to talk about a turnkey product. And actually, I would challenge any rights owner to tell me they have a turnkey product that delivers CRM as a strategy, because to us, CRM is not just about a piece of technology. It's about process. It's about culture. It's obviously about the data as well. There is not one product out there, not one product that is so turnkey it can take care of fan engagement, customer engagement, CRM. So any rights owner that says they have one turnkey product that takes care of everything, I will challenge them and say, no, they don't. You know, CRM as a strategy and a CRM ecosystem, a CRM technology architecture is made up of lots of different components, because we've got lots of different channels and we've got lots of different objectives, and we've got data coming at us from all different places. There's not one piece of technology that can manage that. It's an ecosystem. And so we call it a CRM ecosystem. We don't use the term CRM system because there is not one piece of technology that can do that. But it's great to hear that Salvador and you, Federico, even though you're focused on participation, you also have a very strong understanding of how important data is to rights owners' business side. I'm the opposite. I only work in the business side, and I understand the principles of participation, but I don't have anywhere near the knowledge of your field that you have of my field, and I really do need to brush up on it because it's so important. I wonder if our worlds will collide. You mentioned earlier about the importance of participation data for other purposes, and I do believe that if rights owners were to take just a tiny percentage of the participation data, the performance data, the biometrics that you develop or help them deliver, that would have so much value to their fan engagement, because fans love this type of stuff, don't they? They love knowing, you know, how fast their players run, what their recovery rate is, and, you know, how many assists and stuff like that. I'd love to see rights owners using more of what you do to support what we do.
But rights owners are doing it more or less with gamification, because gamification is a way of engage the fans, let's say, for 24 hours, 7 days a week, ideally. So then that comes to, okay, how you collect the data for that gamification, or which type of window you put for the fan to enter by itself. So definitely this is about getting good data. It's not about getting data from one or another side, because if you have, as more data you have, more you can create. And then you become more cross-industry, you can cross more KPIs. And then your ecosystem of software, which is included by CRMs and many others, can also interact between them and help you to take better decisions, the same way that we do with the stock market and many other industries.
Right. I think while we can talk for the rest of the day around the data points from a performance, participation, and customer relation point of view, we are running slightly out of time. Before we go, I think I've got one question from one of the attendees, and I'd request Salvador if he can do the honors of helping us. The gentleman here,
Sure.
Sanket, is asking, he wants to know, in addition to the player physical performance parameters that are analyzed, what other parameters are used for analysis?
Well, there are basically two types of in regards to player performance. One, and I'm talking on the pitch, not in training sessions. There are many in training sessions, but going in just on game day, basically all the physical parameters such as sprints, quantity of quality sprints, etc. But there's also all the events data, which is basically what happens with the ball. That is also recorded. And there's also tactical metrics such as pressing, which type of formation is more effective, etc. So there are basically, I would say, three. Number one is physical, like the attendee is asking. The second one is the technical one, which is like, what do they do with the ball, shots, etc., quality shots, quality build up, etc. And the third one would be more a tactical one. But those metrics are usually linked with what the coach wants. So if the team presses, or the team doesn't press, does not necessarily mean the player cannot press, or maybe it's because they're told to stay back or whatever. But yeah, those three will be the main focus, and within them there are many metrics within those three spheres.
Right. Thank you so much, Salvador. That brings us to the end of the session, the first session of the final day at GSC. And I would like to thank all our panelists here, Fiona, Salvador, and Federico. Thank you so much, guys, for sparing time from your busy schedule this morning. I believe all of you are based in Europe, for joining us this morning. And I'm sure all our attendees have had an enriching experience to get to know a little more about the football data world and how data actually functions on the field and off the field. Thank you so much once again. And to all attendees, please keep logged in. There are several more sessions throughout the day coming to you with different panelists on different topics of your interest. Thank you once again, Fiona, Salvador, Federico. Thank you so much for logging in, guys. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure moderating.